Adventures of Ellen White and the Pioneers. The Man Who Blew the Gospel Trumpet.
Even though he was not quite 17 years old, John Loughborough felt a real burden that he should go out and preach. It was while he was very sick with malaria that he finally made his decision. He said, "When the fever and the chill was happening, it would be very vividly impressed upon me to decide to go out and preach, and then my chill and fever would stop. So on the day that I had 2 chills in one day, I said, 'Lord, break these chills and fever, and I will go out and preach as soon as I recover sufficient strength to do so.' And the chills stopped that very day." He did not forget his promise, and as soon as he was well enough, he started digging potatoes, cutting and splitting wood, and doing any kind of work he could to earn enough to go out and preach. But even though he worked long hours, he still took time to prepare some sermons. Finally, after a few weeks, he was able to save $1 after he paid all his expenses, and he felt that it would take him where he wanted to go to start preaching. An old family friend came to see him as he was getting ready to go and asked him what he was going to do. And when John told him his plans about preaching, the friend was very happy. "That is just what I expected you to do. When you were only 2 years old, your father said to me, 'That little fellow is going to help blow the gospel trumpet.'" This friend was concerned about John and his plans, and so he said, "John, you've been sick. Do you have any money?" "I have saved $1, John answered, "and this will pay my fare to Rochester and leave me 25 cents, and I will walk the rest of the way to the place I want to go, which is about 25 miles. And so with his Bible and 5 sermons, John started off to begin a long and useful life of preaching. Walking from village to village, John would visit the schools first and get permission to hold meetings at night. And then he would ask the students to tell their parents that there would be a meeting in the school that night. And that very night he would preach one of his 5 sermons. After John was married, he and his wife lived in Rochester, New York, and he earned his living by painting houses 5.5 days a week. John was a first-day or Sunday Adventist preacher. He had not yet heard that the 7th day is the Saturday, the Sabbath. And so on Saturday afternoon, he would drive to one of the 3 churches under his care, and then he would preach Sunday morning and visit the church members in the afternoon, and then return to his home in the evening. One day a friend said to him, "Some of your members have joined the 7th-day people. Hadn't you better go and get them out of their Saturday keeping?" So John Loughborough went to the mission home, the 7th-day Adventist meeting place, fully prepared for a good argument. He also took a list of Bible texts which he thought were proof that the 10-day commandments had been abolished or finished with, and that Christians no longer needed to keep the 7th-day Sabbath. John N. Andrews was the speaker that evening. He was also a young man, about Loughborough's age. And without knowing anything about Loughborough's list of texts, John Andrews was led by the Holy Spirit to preach on this very same subject, using the same texts that John Loughborough had on his list. Elder Andrews explained the text so clearly from the Bible that within 1 month, John Loughborough was keeping the 7th-day Sabbath also. He did not want to be guilty of teaching people to break the commandments, as we read in Matthew 5, verses 17 and 19. "Think not that I come to destroy the law. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." John Loughborough met Elder and Mrs. White for the first time one Sabbath morning at the mission home. In another room of the house rested Oswald Stoll, a young man who ran the hand press on which the Review and Herald was printed. He was seriously ill, and the doctor had said that he could not possibly get well. At the close of the meeting, he asked for Elder and Mrs. White to come to his room and pray for him to be healed. Because John Loughborough was a minister, Elder and Mrs. White invited him to go in with them to pray for the sick man. And the three of them knelt beside the bed and prayed earnestly that God would heal this worker. And when they arose from prayer, the man was sitting up in his bed, tapping and striking his side that had been so painful a few minutes before, and saying, "I am fully healed. I shall be able to work tomorrow." And he did. He went to work 2 days later. When the two men turned to look at Sister White, they saw that she was kneeling beside the bed, looking upwards. "Ellen is in vision," Elder White said quietly. And when the vision ended, she said that she had a special message for Mr. Loughborough. "I saw 3 men trying to keep you from joining the Sabbath-keeping Adventists. I heard unkind words spoken to you by your fellow ministers. The Lord wants you to give yourself wholly to the preaching of the message." Sister White even told him what he had been thinking about in regards to keeping the Sabbath, some thoughts that he had not even expressed to his own wife. Finally, Mr. Loughborough said, "Surely there is a power more than human that is connected with this vision." And after he returned home, he went to his room to pray alone. And he said, "Lord, if thou wilt open the way, I will follow." And then his faith grew stronger, and he said, "I will obey, Lord, and thou wilt open the way." In 1868, Elder Loughborough and Elder D.T. Bordeaux answered a strong request from the General Conference to go as pioneer missionaries to begin the work in California. In less than 2 weeks, the two men were buying a tent in New York and getting ready to start on their long journey. They finally arrived by boat in San Francisco, where they planned to set up their tent, but they could not find a good location. So they prayed that God would guide them in this new mission field and show them where to go. Not long after they arrived, they were approached by a stranger who invited them to set up their tent in Petaluma. He said, "One day I saw a notice in one of the eastern newspapers that 2 ministers were coming to the Pacific coast with a tent to hold meetings. The people of our church in Petaluma have sent me to find these men with a tent and to urge them to hold their first meetings in our town." Mr. Loughborough and Mr. Bordeaux felt that this was God's way of leading them, and so they went along with the man. A few nights before, one of the Petaluma church members had dreamed that he saw 2 men starting a fire, and he saw the preachers of Petaluma trying to put that fire out, but they could not. And then the man saw that these 2 ministers started 4 more fires, until there were 5 fires burning brightly. The man who had the dream said that he would recognize the ministers building the fires if he should ever see them. And when the 2 ministers arrived in Petaluma, the man saw them and exclaimed, "There they are! Those are the identical men that I saw in my dream." Elders Loughborough and Bordeaux pitched their tent, and many people came to the meetings every night, eager to hear this new message. It was not long until there were 5 Seventh-day Adventist churches in Sonoma Valley. These were the 5 fires the man had seen in his dream. This was the beginning of a great work in California. Camp meetings were held, books were sold, and the Pacific Press Publishing Association was organized in Oakland, where they began to print the signs of the times. and it is still being printed all around the world today. Come and join us next time to hear about printing a little paper.